All right, it is 11:45, so let's get started. Thanks everybody for coming to today's session. We are here with Vivek Verma, the AI tech lead from PricewaterhouseCoopers. Today, his session is going to be market research, sentiment analysis, and hypotheses testing. I'm your moderator. My name is Kyle Martinowicz. I'm the VP of Partnerships and Strategic Alliances here at Clarifai. A couple of little things around housekeeping before we get started. I ask that all attendees will be muted, but we do encourage you to ask questions, which you can do by typing in the Q&A widget on the top right corner of your event screen. We will answer all questions after the session, which will last about 30 minutes. The session will be recorded and available after the event. Our team here at Clarifai will email that out to you. So let me take the opportunity to introduce you to today's speaker. This is Vivek Verma. Again, he is the AI tech lead at PricewaterhouseCoopers. He's currently a research scientist working in NLP for AstraZeneca. He has over a decade of experience in emerging technologies, data science, and analytics from some of the best institutions, including IBM, the IBM TJ Watson Research Center in New York, which is one of my favorite places to go up to and see and hear about new innovative product. He's previously led a team in analytics at PwC and has helped startups in developing data science and machine learning capabilities. He holds a double MS in nanoscale science and computational and applied mathematics, something that I can't say that I have. His current research interests are in NLP, smart drones, and AI-enabled IoT sensors, some things that Clarifai, as you saw in the keynote, if you did, is working on as well. Couple of little things about Clarifai. You didn't get to the keynote. I'll just give you a quick overview. Clarifai is the leading independent provider of AI for unstructured image and video data. We provide an AI platform that's end-to-end for computer vision and NLP, and it covers the entire NLP lifecycle. Our company was founded in 2013 by the keynote and speaker today, Matt Zeeler, after winning 5 awards for his computer vision work at NYU. So without further ado, I am 2 minutes into it. I want to give Vivek the most amount of time. Vivek, I'm going to pass it to you. You now have the floor. Feel free to present your screen and let the process begin.
Awesome, great. Thanks so much again, Kyle, for introducing myself and giving this introduction. So let me pull up my screen. It's online, right? The screen is...
We can see it perfectly. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. So welcome everyone, and thanks again for this opportunity to let me speak on this interesting topic, which I'm going to share with you, and which I have been working in last recent years. So market research, sentiment analysis, and hypothesis testing is something which has spiked a lot of traction in the last 4 to 5 years, particularly with the new types of business intelligence tools, which have enhanced their capabilities in the field of analytics, and also adding some of the machine learning models in their core BI platforms. And the examples, as we know, are Alteryx, Power BI, and ClickSense as well. So let's get started with this topic by talking about some basics of market research. So the flow will be, we will talk about some of the basics, and then we will give some statistics, followed by some of the glitches, and then we will talk about some specific use cases, which helps us gain more competitive edge when we talk about market research analytics for some applications. So market research is defined in simple terms as the study of performance and acceptance of products and services. And the main focus, one of the main focus, I would say, of market research is to understand customer-centric behaviors. It also provides the companies to get first-hand reviews, and which helps them to find the target customers. The vital category of market research applications is in parametric understanding, I would say, of a a product viability and also in concept testing. So this term market research has been around in the industry from the last 10 to 12 years, but in the era of analytics and with the ease of use of large scale of data for different purposes, this market research has also gained its popularity and momentum. So as it is reflected in the statistics, the global revenue of market research companies exceeded 73 billion US dollars, and the annual growth of global market research revenue is 3.9%. The number does not look promising, but if we break down this global market revenue in terms of developed economies and developing economies, then we see that in North America particularly, we see close to 6.5 to 7% annual growth in market research revenues. And also in Europe and Asia Pacific markets, we see close to 5%. So in terms of the developed economies getting more benefit and revenues from market research, we see a great incremental increase. And also the share of market research revenue generated by online quantitative research, which is one of the hot topics in market analytics, is 17% in 2019. And as we see here, the previous slide, we looked into the annual growth of the market research revenues. We see that there is an incremental increase over the last one decade. And in 2019, it's close to $74 billion. So there has been a huge uptick in companies accepting, realizing, and implementing their resources in market research, in analytic-related market research applications as well. Some of the common tasks which we perform in market research analytics are the measurement of market. So when we say the measurement of market, what we do is we try to understand how the products which are performing and how different types of services which are in the market are kind of responding with respect to customers and the users. Another thing which is important in market research is concept testing. So concept testing basically means, for example, if your company wants to, let's say, put an ad for a particular product, so it tries to understand the perception and how it will be taken in the population, in the users. So this is all is covered under concept testing. And then customer satisfaction is another important area, and that is what we will be discussing in the later section of this talk. So we see here that out of this 10 important tasks which was identified by the BMRA in 2018, all of the top 4 has gained a double-digit increment in terms of the tasks which are involved in market research. So we know that we talked about some increments in market research activities and some of the good things like increase in revenues, the uptick in the market share and things like that. However, there is a disclaimer. When we do some reality check and when the team which actually works in market research has dropped down into their meetings, then they found that only 54% of the decisions were influenced by analytics. And this is the latest data, which was actually published by Gartner 2020 report. And we see that almost 46% of the decisions are not influenced by analytics. And this data and this pie chart and the data which we are looking at, it actually kind of gives us a reality of what is happening in the industry right now. So most of the chief marketing officers who were involved in this study, they complained that the amount of resources which they have spent on marketing analytics did not give them the meaningful or fruitful results. And there are some important reasons which they found was responsible for this trend or this data. The first thing is poor data quality. A lot of data which were used for marketing analytics did not actually confine with the purpose of the studies. Second thing, the findings or the results which they have drafted and which they have found using different analytical tools did not complied with the course of action, which means that the business did not get benefited with the analytical team results, and as a result there was a compatibility issue in terms of translating the analytical results to the business applications. And also there was some amount of confusion among the analysis and the analytical tests which was used in making those type of marketing decisions, because the softwares, particularly the BI softwares, business intelligence softwares, which are currently used, they comes with their own limitations, and these are some important reasons why the decisions which were being made on the basis of analytics did not got much buffer or was not taken into much consideration with the teams involved in market research studies. But all is not lost. We still have a ray of hope. The same study conducted by Gartner report, it actually mentioned that in the next 2 years, there will be 44% growth in the marketing analytic team. And some of the important reasons why we see this growth is because of the lessons learned from the past, which means that some of the ways in which companies were collecting data and using some of the analytical tools were kind of revamped, and they found or they will find some better ways of collecting the data and improving the quality of analytical tests. And also the softwares, business intelligence softwares and other tools which are being used, the third-party tools which are being used for marketing research analytics, they also learn from their mistakes, and that will again help in the growth of team and increased hiring. And one of the important reason why the teams will grow in marketing analytics is involving some intuitive approaches in the application of analytics and machine learning. So this is what is the topic of discussion in the next slides. So before we begin our discussion on marketing analytics and what are some intuitive ways in which we can improve the results and the accuracy of marketing analytics, let's talk about some of the applications of artificial intelligence and natural language processing, which are leading the growth and the capabilities of marketing research. So the first topic is sentiment analysis. It is also one of the buzzword in the industry at present. Sentiment analysis is an important task which helps in identifying the perception behind text data. So in the last 1 decade, we see there is a huge increase in the growth of social media apps and different platforms wherein the customers and the users, they review and provide their feedback on particular products and services. So this becomes a good pool of data from which important behavioral metrics can be tracked and identified, and insight analysis can be drafted. Some of the important things which we do with sentiment analysis are finding the attitude of customers towards a particular product. So for example, let's say if you want to launch a new version of an existing product, then you do some sort of marketing research analytics and try to identify some of the factors which govern the success or failure or performance of your product in the market. And as a result, you are indirectly understanding the attitude of customers towards your product. So this is all are being done with the help of sentiment analysis tools and packages. Some of the common applications of sentiment analysis in market research, like we discussed, are identifying customer perception of products and services. Another thing which we can do is to understand how a particular brand is performing, particularly if you spend a lot of money in advertisements, then you definitely want to see how it is kind of accepted in terms of the performance of your products. Another important application of sentiment analysis is pattern identification of products and services usage. So what it means is that if you want to identify some of the reasons why a particular age group inclines more towards your products and services, or you want to identify some demographic information on how your the products and services excel in the market, then sentiment analysis kind of helps you, because it has some ways of giving you a breakdown results of demographic, age, and other things. And then one of the most important things which we can do with market research results or data are to get new ideas on your products and services launch. So for example, with the perception you get from the feedbacks and reviews, a lot of time customer actually gives you some new ideas on how you can improve your existing products, and also how you can drive your growth in the market. So all of these ideas and intuition actually are also, or can also, be derived using sentiment analysis results. So sentiment analysis actually has been used a lot in market research, but still, after all has been said and done, there are still some prevalent challenges existing. For example, in majority of cases, with the data, with the type of data, and with the type of experiments we run in sentiment analysis, we are not able to properly identify what are the factors governing a particular sentiment. So for example, if the product is getting some negative reviews in Twitter or in any other social media platform, then your company want to identify what are the main reasons why the customers are not satisfied. Then these reasons or factors are hard to identify a lot of time. So one of the ways to deal with it is to kind of compare the results from the data collected from public domain, and also do some sort of research studies or controlled group studies in which you set some metrics as constant, and with the other metrics you kind of compare the results which you have got from the public domain. And this is how in a lot of cases the factors which are responsible can be validated, as well as we see in the future slide. A very close thing which we do along with sentiment analysis during a product performance analysis is hypothesis testing. So hypothesis testing, it comes from statistics, and it helps to determine whether a particular factor impacts positive or negative sentiment during your sentiment analysis test. So we are actually trying to connect the applications of hypothesis test with sentiment analysis in order to get some meaningful results, or to get better insights on what we have already found in our sentiment analysis. So in hypothesis test, the statistical interpretation, it actually provides us a parametric results, or a parametric analysis of your product performance, and as a result, those parameters can be adjudged or can be deemed as responsible for a particular sentiment which you have drafted, or which you have found or identified during your sentiment analysis or data. So just to give a little background on how hypothesis tests are done. So initially you formulate or draft null and alternate hypothesis. And after doing it, you calculate the test statistic from the sample data. And using that, the p-value or the probability value is found, and it is used to compare it with the set significance level, which is usually in industry we keep it as 5%. And depending on the p-value less than or greater than the significance level, we accept or reject our null hypothesis. So this is the fundamental steps which are used in hypothesis testing. Now let's talk about a scenario or a methodology in which we can use the sentiment analysis for a product performance and use the hypothesis test in order to identify some of the factors responsible for that specific sentiments. So here, in this scenario, the goal is to understand the performance of a product through customer feedbacks, and these feedbacks are actually available in public domain. And then after identifying the feedbacks or reviews and the sentiments behind that, next step will be to identify some of the reasons behind those feedbacks. And what this study will do is that it will help companies make better marketing decisions. It will help in brand performance and brand evaluation. And as a result, it results in maintaining competitive edge in the industry in terms of that particular product. So in the first step, what usually is done is with respect to the particular product, you mine or you scrape data from social media platforms like Twitter and Reddit. And then based on the amount of data which you want and which are important for your study, you kind of identify the features which are responsible. For example, the date, time, the geographic location, some of the other metrics which you can find in different packages used in data mining from Twitter. And typically, a lot of teams use Python scrappers, which are deployed in the pipeline CI/CD and pull data, which kind of gets automated over a period of time. So for example, if you want to harness last 1 year of information, and then you also want to keep a track of monthly progress on the product and the reviews, then you kind of develop an automation tool which kind of gives you that that specific data. So once the data is collected and some of the processing has been done, the next step is to perform sentiment analysis. So customer-centric reviews can be categorized into positive, negative, or neutral sentiments using some standard packages in Python like NLTK, like Spacey, and so on. And if you want to get more concise or more precise understanding of those sentiments from complicated text, then there is another area which are used to explore, known as context-based sentiment analysis, and these are being performed using some deep learning frameworks. And the common way to express positive or negative sentiment is through word cloud, and it actually gives us a corpus or a collection of the top words which are responsible for positive or negative sentiments. So in this graphic, we have a compound score which is differentiated into positive, negative, or neutral scores based on the different positive, negative scores from the feature variable here. Now, after doing the sentiment analysis, in the next step, we perform something known as topic modeling. So the factors which are responsible for positive or negative sentiment with respect to a particular product can be identified when you break the entire corpus into separate topics and then identify the common or the most prominent keywords profound in those particular topics. And what it does is that it actually gives you a breakdown of the entire corpus so that you can be assured what are the important keywords which you can look for when you are studying for the factors responsible uh, for positive or negative sentiments. So typically, this step is actually complemented by some other analysis. For example, you can do some Google trend analysis and see what are the common queries, what are the time series analysis, what are the different types of rising keywords which are found along with the particular query search you are doing. And based on the results which you get, you can identify the important factors customer I'm sorry the users or customers are searching for when they talk about your product. So this again kind of gives us a clue or a direction in which we can approach our study on finding some parameters responsible for positive or negative sentiments. So after identifying some of the important factors, what we want to do is we want to test those factors using hypothesis testing. So initially what is done is that those factors which were identified are being used to draft a null and alternate hypothesis. So this null and alternate hypothesis are then validated using hypothesis test. In that the sample population is taken and we calculate the p-value. The p-value is actually compared with the significance level, and based on the interpretation of the p-value and significance level, you accept or reject the null hypothesis, and as a result, you can validate or disregard the factor responsible for specific sentiment on a particular product. So let's take an example. If we so let's say we have a product in market, and we want to identify some of the factors which may be responsible for negative sentiment of that particular product. And let's say there is a new software update which has been done. So we draft or formulate a null hypothesis, something like this: a new software update did not impact product sales decrease. On the contrary, the alternate hypothesis says that the new software update impact the product sales decrease. So after drafting this null and alternate hypothesis, you perform hypothesis test by setting apart significance level or alpha of 5% and calculate the p-value using some test statistics. And after calculating the p-value, we compare both the significance level and p-value, and based on the interpretation, we reject or accept the null hypothesis. So for example, in this case, since let's say the p-value is less than 5%, so we say that we reject the null hypothesis, which means that the new software update actually has an impact on the decrement or reduction in product sales. So that is something which the company wants to look at, of how they can make sure the next software update which is being done does not kind of create that type of perception or behavior among the customers and prevent the decrement in future. So the validation of this test results, which we obtain using hypothesis tests, are then compared with the data from study groups or internal data samples. So basically what happens is that the data which we collect from random sample from social media and elsewhere, they comes with some sort of stochastic nature, which means that some of the factors which we want to identify cannot be confirmed or concretely validated, because there are so much randomness in the data that there is nothing which can be kept constant, or there is nothing which can be concretely compared. So the best way to validate your test results from hypothesis test and sentiment analysis is to do an internal data analysis, wherein you use some controlled features, some controlled attributes, and then change the other attributes. And after doing that, you kind of compare if the results matches with the hypothesis test and the internal data. If we see that the results are actually matching, then the identified factors or parameters are validated to be responsible for positive or negative sentiments, and thus for customer behavior. If not, then there are excuse me, certain things which can be done. For example, we can use better sources of data, or we can identify some other ways of testing, or we can actually totally disregard the tests and find out some other ways of finding the factors which are responsible for particular sentiments. So these are some strategies which we follow when we see our hypothesis test results and we want to validate and present it to the business team. And that is what I had for this talk. I think I wrapped it in time.
Perfect.
So it looks like we are well in time.
Yeah. We had two questions. One is a multi-part question, Vivek. Maybe you can answer this quick question. Can you give me an example of how you deal with it looks like it's asking about sentiment analysis on slang or based on country or language. So it's asking, how do you account for slang, and it looks like country or language of origin? So how do you factor those differences into your NLP analysis, or how do you get them into your taxonomy? How do you do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And typically we see that if you collect data from Reddit or Twitter, there are a lot of slangs, there are a lot of emoticons which are used to express your feedbacks or reviews. So initially, when we start our analysis, we kind of ignore those slangs and those special characters, and we get a generic understanding of how the sentiments are. In the next step, what we particularly do is we use some new packages which helps us in identifying the meaning of those slangs. For example, when we talk about emoticons and different ways of expressing your happiness or your dissatisfaction, then there are different packages, in Python, which we involve, which gives you the meaning of those emotions or those slangs. And the third thing which we do is when we develop more concise understanding of sentiments, we actually do context-based reasoning or context-based sentiment analysis. So what this does is that it actually identifies the disambiguity in writing. So for example, there are certain ways of expressing your dissatisfaction, and you can say, for example, if you're not satisfied with a particular restaurant service, you said that you did a great job, I will not come again. So in the first part of the sentence, it looks like you are kind of complimenting, but in the second part, you are actually expressing your dissatisfaction. So in typical generic sentiment analysis, the model will be confused to identify it as a negative sentiment. However, when they understand the sarcasm or the sarcastic context of the entire sentence, then the model or the library will actually helps you identify that the customer is not happy with the restaurant service. So these are some ways, some intuitive ways which you can kind of add on when you want to study the slangs, the different emoticons, and the disambiguity in sentences when a particular customer speaks.
Great. The second question revolved around how do you determine the taxonomy for each line of business? Meaning, you guys do market research. So if market research could be competitive, it reads, you can do competitive analysis, you could do internal analysis, you could do product analysis. So how do you determine a taxonomy for the different portions of the line of business is the question, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, so honestly, I'm not the best person to answer this question because I actually comes from a research background, and I've done work in market research. However, my area or my focus is limited to a particular product or a group of the product in line. So the way I look at is I actually try to identify the reasons why that particular product fails or get flopped in the market, rather than identifying the other areas in the hierarchy which may be responsible for different domains of market research.
Gotcha. And actually, a last question just popped in the box. How do you determine the content for searching? Meaning, how do you determine what words to go search Reddit or Twitter? Because you have to. It looks like somebody put a thing for how do you determine what words to call the API, the Twitter API? But I'm guessing I added Reddit in there too. But how do you make a determine on what words you're looking for in Twitter, or in your case, you put Twitter and Reddit?
So the way is very simple. If you have a Twitter or Reddit account, just open it, and whatever keyword which you are interested in, just type it in the search bar. You'll get some information. So that is what you see. So when we develop some Python scrapper, we actually follow the similar strategy. We create a dictionary of objects, which we try to in which regard we try to find our data, and based on those particular keywords, we mine information, or we mine data from Twitter, Reddit, or from Google Trends, wherever, and that is how you get the relevant data. When you talk about API, there are certain libraries like Tweepy, Get Old Tweets, and so on, which can be easily scripted in Python, and you can harness data or mine data from that. Other ways are you can make your own web crawler, which can directly go to a particular website and mine data from there.
Okay. And then my personal question, we only have about 7 minutes, but this is a personal question, is how do you affect change over time, right? Languages change, humans change, and then how do you show those control changes over time, right? Because how my mom speaks, I'm 40, my mom is 70, how she speaks is very different than how I speak, and then I have a 10-year-old son who speaks very differently than how I speak. So how do you effectively show your end users those changes between demographics, I guess?
Yeah, that's again a great question. So not only with the different demographic and age groups, but every individual has their own way of expressing the emotions or sentiments. So, which means that there are n different types of expressing, or n different types of data which can be present as the number of population, or the number of individuals in a particular population. Which means that the models, the different machine learning models which are being used in the industry, needs to update themselves. So, for example, in the past, when generic sentiment analysis was being performed, most of the emotions, the special characters and slang words were being kind of ignored because there were not enough packages which were able to track the essence of what they were speaking. But now, since we do have different ways of identifying the meaning or perception behind the slang words or different types of different modes of expressing sentiments. So we involved it. So likewise, companies and different teams are actually doing their own research. It's a dynamic process, which means that as we go, the machine learning models also learn themselves, so that they keep a track of time on how to evolve itself to provide more meaningful, more concise results with new influx of data, and help in better identification of the perception of the customer population.
Makes sense. Though
Yeah.
doesn't sound very easy, that's for sure.
It is not. I mean, initially, in a lot of cases, you have to manually read the text sometimes, if it's possible, and then see if it makes sense. And then once you are able to do it, you kind of tune in your models on
Gotcha.
the same line.
So how often, you mentioned before, how often are you putting or in that internal check? You wrote in your slides that you were, to do auditing or analysis, that you do an internal check on that. How big of a corpus? How often are you doing it? I would love to hear about that as well.
It depends on the type of product you are exploring it. So for example, if you're working on some very hot topics, some very hot products, the amount of data which you can mine is immense. So, which means that it can be from maybe 1,000 rows of tweets to 100,000 or millions of rows of tweets. So, when you want to study historical information or historical pattern in a particular product, if you're well aware of the amount of tweets or the amount of information which are represent, you kind of break down your analysis in the context of time. For example, if you want to study only 1 year of data, 2 year of data, 5 year of data. So depending on the amount of information which is available and the type of studies which you are doing, you kind of make some adjustments on that part as well.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. I didn't see any other questions come in on the moderator chat thing. I think that's it. I think we're gonna wrap up. I want to, first say thank you to Vivek Verma. Again, he is the AI tech lead at PricewaterhouseCoopers. Today's talk about market research, specifically around sentiment analysis and hypothesis testing. I want to say thank you very much. I want to say thank you for everybody who joined. Again, a little bit more housekeeping. We will send out a recording of this session to all attendees. Also, in that email will be a link to Vivek's bio and to his LinkedIn. I suggest everybody hook up with him. He has great content on LinkedIn and consistently posting about his work and about the work that he is passionate in. So that's it for today at Clarifai. If anybody else has anything else, please, again, throw it in the chat, and either myself or somebody else from the Clarifai team will follow up. Otherwise, thanks again, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks so much, Kyle, and thanks everyone for joining in.
All right. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.